Saints Ravens Monday Night Football recap. So the day after Monday Night Football, otherwise known as Tuesday. God, that was brutal. I mean, we're gonna look at the box score. We're gonna go over some stuff that I saw in the game, and then we're gonna listen to Bobby Hebert from WWL talk about what he saw. And we'll react to that. I mean, look, here's the deal. We've been talking about this every week. We basically say the same thing, right? We preview the game saying the same thing. We say we want to see Kamara get involved. We want to see our best players be used appropriately. We want to be competitive. We want to have a plan. We want to be creative. We say that every week. Whenever they do that, and by they I mean Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael, whenever they do that, we come on here and we say, great job. Y'all were creative. Alvin Kamara was involved. Taysom Hill was involved. We had a scheme. We had a plan. And then there's some weeks where we don't. And last night was a night where we didn't. Last night was a night where we had zero plan, zero consistency, zero scheme. I mean, I really just don't get it. Like, let's look at the box score real quick. So, I mean, total yards. We actually ended up having 5 yards to play. Now, a lot of this is just trash, garbage time. We were never competitive in the game. We were never able to do anything. We were never able to sustain drives. We were never able to get in, punch it in the red zone. We relied on field goals. The last drive, this drive here with the Juwan Johnson pass, you take that away. That's 9 plays for 83 yards, including a 41-yard pass. You take that away, so that's 81 yards, right? 83 yards. You take that away, I mean, we're doing nothing. You take 83 yards away from 243, we're paltry. I mean, 243 is not good, but you take away another 80 yards, and I mean, you're talking about what, 160? Quick math. We're doing 160. I hope that's right. 160 yards of total offense. I mean, at that point, what's your yards per play? Not good, right? If we look at the Ravens, 4.9 yards per play. They were virtually running the ball at will, specifically in the second half. Kenyon Drake really got going in the second half. It was a wild game. Yards per rush, 3.2. Absolute 15 attempts. We'll talk about that a lot more. Obviously, 1 turnover here. This is one of those things where there's nothing to derive from this box score because the game was so out of hand, even though it looks like it wasn't. I mean, I was sitting there, and when they were up 14 at the end here, when the Saints scored, and it became a 14-point game as it finished, Lamar was coming out of the game. Huntley was taking off his headset. He was taking off his stuff. Lamar was about to come out. The only reason Lamar played at the end was because it was a 2-possession game with like 4 minutes left. That's how non-competitive it was. That a 2-possession game with 4 minutes left, the starting quarterback was about to exit the game. He was ready. His night was done. And because of a freak 41-yard passing touchdown, they had to go back in. Or he had to go back in. I mean, no one did anything. If you look at the box score for everybody, Lamar wasn't that great. He didn't have to be. 12 for 22. If you showed me this, 12 for 22 for 133 yards and 11 carries for 82 yards. If you showed me that, I would have said that the Saints won the game. Not to mention, Lamar really probably had about 15 carries because a bunch of these carries were graded as sacks, which is ridiculous because I had Lamar Jackson's over 9.5 rushing attempts, and I was sweating that because four rushes were taken away because they were deemed sacks. I don't understand how a quarterback can have a designed run to the outside, and if they don't gain yardage, it's a sack. I mean, you don't count sacks on option plays. If you do an option, it's a run. You know, like when you're playing Georgia Tech, you don't end up with, in college, if you're playing against them, your team doesn't end up with 60 sacks. So I'm not sure how a quarterback designed run to the outside, when Lamar is tucking it, I'm not sure how that's graded as sack, but that's a different conversation. If you look on the Saints side of things, Dalton wasn't great. Kamara, 9 carries, 30 yards. Dwayne Washington, 3 carries. Taysom with the carry. And then you see the receiving here. Just nothing. Kamara with 4 targets, 3 receptions. A couple on the last drives, I believe. I mean, I'm not sure what else I need to say. Like, I'm not sure how many more times I need to say this. Here's the deal. Allen is not a head coach. He's never been a head coach. I believe in his career now he's 11 for 30 or something like that as a head coach. Carmichael is not offensive coordinator. This team is not the same team as it was 12 months ago. They need an identity. They need a head coach. They need a plan. This is nothing against Dennis Allen. I really harp on Dennis Allen because he is so obviously the problem, I think. He is so obviously the issue. Now, I may be unfair. It may be more Pete Carmichael than I assume. One of those two is the issue. You cannot have this game, Monday Night Football in New Orleans, coming off of the performance Kamara had against the Raiders, and then you end up with this. Think about an NFL coach, right? Or think about a high school coach. Going into a game, they have to be planning. They have to be thinking, how can we win this game? How can we win this game? The answer to that, every game for the Saints, the answer is let's limit Dalton. Let's make sure that he doesn't do we're not asking him to do too much, and let's rely on our playmakers. Who are our playmakers? Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, and Chris Olave. Okay, how can we get them in the best possible situation to succeed? How can we design plays and call plays to get them where they need to be to succeed? How can we do that? Kamara, how can we do that? He's got to get touches. He's got to get 7, 8, 9, 10 targets. We got to get him in space. We have to have screens. We have to have designed passes for him on top of when Andy just checks down to him. Okay, what about the running game? Let's mix and match with him and Taysom. Let's get Taysom somewhere in the neighborhood of 5, 6, 7 carries, and then 4 more other plays where he's either a receiver or a quarterback, however you want to do it. Okay, Olave. Let's utilize him down the field. Let's stretch the field out a little bit. Whenever they're keying in on Kamara or Taysom, let's use Olave. Let's use him a little bit. All those sound perfectly reasonable. But instead, somehow this became the game plan. Let's try and win the game with Alvin Kamara touching the ball 12 times. And these 3 receptions, like I said, those are just kind of dumps at the end. I think he had one. He may not have even had a designed pass play. All 3 of these may have just been checkdowns, which is even worse. Taysom Hill, 1 carry. I just don't. Let's look at the game log because I brought this up walking home from the dome. But look at the differences. Look at this. All right, the last game before the Ravens, 18 carries, 62 yards, a touchdown, 9 receptions, 10 targets, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. Okay, 150 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns, 27 touches. How do you go from that to this in one game on Monday Night Football? Let's look at Taysom. Let's look at Taysom. This one's going to be depressing. But it seems to be that Carmichael and Allen are trying to not succeed. Let's look at Taysom. All right, Taysom. His touchdown game, Seattle. He has 9 carries for 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. And let's look after that. Drops. 5 attempts. All right, immediately drops. Next game, drops even further. 3 attempts. One target, 1 reception. Granted, it was a 3-yard touchdown, but still, drops again. Okay? So we go from 9 attempts, his biggest game in the year, 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. What do they immediately do? Take the ball out of his hands. Immediately take the ball away from him. And then they double down and do it again, right? Against Arizona. So they've done it and then they double down. Then boom, he's back against the Raiders. Okay? 10 attempts and 2 targets. And what do? Immediately pull back. And he goes for 1 attempt and 1 target. How is that possible? How is that possible that they're doing that? This like roller coaster yo-yo thing they do here. Look at these. This is crazy to me to go from how Kamara played against the Raiders to this Baltimore game plan. It's just It's just not the case, or it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Dennis Allen has to go. I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter saying, or let's pull up Bobby Hebert and we'll react. We'll talk about this as Hebert talks a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, this is Bobby Hebert from WWL in New Orleans. So a little local Cajun flavor for you.
Community Coffee, New Orleans Saints Radio Network. Saints fall 27-13. Bobby, Saints got their ass kicked, period.
That's being kind, Christian. That's being kind.
They almost didn't. Like, to say you got your ass kicked means you were in the fight. The Saints were never in the fight. The Saints were never, ever, ever even in the ring to get their ass kicked. The Saints just rolled over. And I don't think it's the Saints. I don't think it's the actual Saints themselves. I think they rolled over with the game plan.
But you know what? How you match up against certain teams, the Saints have never matched up well against the Ravens in the history. You know how you might say, well, the defense is a little down.
I cannot stand whenever people do this. I mean, I think I talked about this last time we listened to Bobby, but the way the Saints have played the Ravens in history has nothing to do with how they played last night. This is the first time they've seen Lamar Jackson. I believe this is the first time they've played the Raiders since 2012. So, I mean, it has nothing to do with that. Now, I will say, interesting note, Lamar Jackson, the first time people are Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, who we talked about in the preview, the first time a team sees Greg Roman with Baltimore, so when they're playing Baltimore, and the first time they're seeing his scheme, which is basically Lamar Jackson, teams are 2-25 or 2-26 now against Greg Roman. That is crazy. All right, I'll say that again. When teams face Greg Roman for the first time in Baltimore, opposing teams have 2 wins and 26 losses. That is crazy how good Greg Roman is at this. All time, because he was also the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator whenever Colin Kaepernick was there. Similar system. I believe he was 11, or teams against him were 11-48 first time they met him. That's crazy. And the Saints now fall victim to that.
Man, they don't look down to me. Okay, so we shut out the Raiders. Man, the Raiders are garbage. They all excited. Oh, we beat the Raiders. I want to drink the Kool-Aid. I want to say, okay, we're going to win 2 in a row. Man, the Ravens punked us.
The thing about the Raiders game is that, like what we just highlighted with the box score, it's not even about shutting them out. It's about how did we go from how we played against the Raiders to the scheme against the Ravens just a week later. How is that possible? How is it possible that we look that good and we do those things and we attempt to play a certain way? It works. And instead of leaning on that again, the game plan becomes something completely different. And I'm not even sure what the game plan was. If you were to ask me, what did we try and do last night? I would have absolutely no idea. I would not have an answer for you. I really don't know. Because we didn't try and run the football. We didn't try and get Kamara involved in the passing game. We didn't rely on Taysom. I really have no idea. I mean, leave me a comment below. Because I want to hear what anyone thinks we tried to do last night.
It looked like the JV versus the varsity. Now,
it did.
With that being said, and I was talking about history between the Ravens and the Saints, we have played them, Christian, now in the regular season. We've only played them 8 times, but they've won 6 games. We won 2. We played them 3 times in New Orleans. You know how many games we won in New Orleans? 0.
I mean, I don't want to harp on this too much, but like, let's say that those 8 games were whenever the Saints were terrible and the Ravens were winning Super Bowls or had the best defense in the NFL. Like, how many of those times were with Drew Brees? How many of those times were with Kerry Collins? How many of those times were with Aaron Brooks? How many times was that with Andy Dalton? You know, like, there's so many variables that matter in those situations. How many times were the Saints the favorite? How many times did the Saints end the season with a winning record, or the Ravens? Like, those things matter. If the Ravens were favored in every one of our of our matchups, and they won six out of 2. That's about right. Our 6, they went 6-2. That's about right. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I don't understand these historical trends. Let's skip ahead to get away from the historical stuff.
One team. Look all the success Sean Payton and Drew Brees had. It took them sort of latter part of their staying career with the Saints, to beat every team in the NFL, and the last one was the Ravens. Because how they match up. They punch you in the mouth. Can you punch back? I mean, you see Roquan tackle Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara's a stud. Look how he makes everybody look foolish, but not Roquan Smith. Man, that dude's going to help the Ravens. I'm not saying he's the second coming of Ray Lewis.
I mean, Roquan Smith is a good pickup for the Ravens, no doubt about it.
But
he had nothing to do with this game.
Going to pay him, and he might eventually help the Ravens get where they want to be. That, to me, the Ravens is still kind of like old school football. And like I said, it's all about the matchup. What you're going to do.
The Ravens actually are one of those teams that I think are really transitioning into like this next era of football. I mean, the way they play, the way they scheme, the way they kind of go about what they're doing, it's so progressive. Harbaugh is one of the most like leaning on analytics. He goes for it on fourth down a lot. He's great time management. Last night he challenged a play that he didn't have to challenge, or I don't think he wanted to challenge. There was 12 men on the field. He threw a challenge flag because he knew he was going to burn a timeout anyways. Like, he's just thinking so far ahead. The scheme they run is really incredible. I mean, you're talking about a college scheme, like a pistol college scheme, run pass option, a lot of RPO, a lot of that kind of stuff. And they run it even when things aren't working out. That's something the Saints do not do. I mean, the Saints, if they're winning, they'll run it 30 times. If they're losing, they'll run it 9. There is no like rhyme or reason. It's just like, we'll try this, and then we'll try this, and then we'll try this play. Oh, we're losing. We need to pass. Oh, but we can't pass too far, so let's keep everything close. We're down 17. Let's run 4-yard curl routes. Like there's nothing there. There's nothing for them. Now the Ravens, what Bobby's saying, the Ravens are interesting because they're not this old school, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, let the defense win. Lamar does some wild stuff. I mean, he really has a leash with what he can do. He is not pigeonholed into anything. He had a couple plays last night that were just schoolyard looking plays, but they're designed like that. Even the first touchdown, the fake rollout to the right, the fake design run with the tight end lagging. What a beautiful design play, and it came immediately after a design run by Lamar. I mean, that's just so much scheme. That's so much, 3D chess there, where it's like, all right, we're going to run this design run to the left. We're going to show the same formation. We're going to try and draw them in. Oop, tight end, touchdown. Perfect call, perfect time, perfect everything. It's just two franchises that are so far away from each other. It's mind-numbing.
Now, the one thing that came about, and I said this in the pregame, we talked with Deuce and everybody, and this is how the Ravens play. Can you run the ball, and can you stop the run? There ain't nothing sexy about Lamar Jackson. He's 12 of 22, 133 yards. He was even mad at himself. He missed guys that were high school wide. Lamar missed a lot of people. But another thing with the Ravens you got to remember is that Lamar is playing with nobody. Lamar is playing with what Andy Dalton had a couple weeks ago. Bateman's out. Andrews out. I mean, they're down to their Devin Duvernay, I guess, is like their main guy. Isaiah Likely is having to catch touchdowns. Kenyon Drake, he was cast off, and he's in his second or third go-around in the league. Kenyon Drake is their featured back. I mean, Lamar is dragging a very, very beat-up Ravens team into a discussion for the 1 seed. I mean, Lamar is, the numbers might not be sexy, but his performances, right now, his performances are at a different level. Open. But, Christian, we're lucky he didn't hit those plays. It would have really been a stomp. But, boy, with his feet, is he magical or what? Christian, I think he might be as good, if not better, than Michael Vick. And I covered Michael Vick.
Different time. Physically, Vick was better. As far as, like, playing quarterback, Lamar might be better. Now, if Vic had the system with Harbaugh, if Vic played now, Vic is kind of like Reggie Bush, where Reggie was like 5 years out. If Reggie would have been in the exact same situation Le'Veon Bell was in, Reggie would be a Hall of Famer. Reggie would have won MVPs. If Reggie was playing slot wide receiver 10 times a game, and he was catching screens and catching these passes and running the way Le'Veon was running the plays like that, Reggie would have been the best player in the league. He just wasn't there yet. He was playing in the NFL whenever you were still running up the middle. It was still that style of running. Michael Vick, he didn't get the design runs that Lamar got. Mike Vick was making a lot happen on his own. What would have happened if Mike Vick was asked to run all these RPOs and he was asked to run these kind of design runs? Now, the other question is, could he have held up? Because Lamar is really good at not getting hit. New quarterbacks are better at that. I think Vic would have taken a lot of unnecessary hits, but they're close.
I was doing the radio in Atlanta. Michael Vick was playing. He was magic, at Florida State. Now, I think Lamar,
Virginia Tech,
was magic at Louisville. But
Virginia Tech.
Lamar Jackson.
No, I'm talking about Michael Vick.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Lamar Jackson.
You said okay.
No, Michael Vick's at Virginia Tech, what he did in college, but Lamar Jackson at Louisville.
Right.
Now, Lamar Jackson, I think, has gotten better as a pro. Michael Vick was already good as a college player. He just continued that from Virginia Tech into the NFL.
Lamar won the Heisman. It's hard not to say that Lamar wasn't already good in college. He won the Heisman,
Well, Lamar Jackson, I think he's actually even gotten better. Now, what the Ravens are going to do, it's all about it. Deshaun Watson, that's the kind of money he's trying to get. But what's going to end up happening, they're going to franchise tag him. I think he's still going to get paid, but that's where he's at. But you look at running the ball, stopping the run. Okay, what was going to give?
So that was something interesting. So if you watch the preview that I did, you'll remember that I said that the Saints would be a good landing spot for Lamar Jackson. But I said, you got to also bring Greg Roman. Maybe he can be the head coach. And Sean Payton mentioned it last night on the Manning cast. He mentioned that he's a free agent and Lamar's a free agent. And look, if Sean Payton, I've said this a million times, and I've said this on Twitter, I think Loomis is holding out that Sean Payton's going to come back to New Orleans. If he does come back to New Orleans, I think you have a real question of hey, Sean, do you want Lamar? Because if so, I'm okay with giving Lamar whatever the deal is going to be. And if you're looking at Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Chris Olave with Sean Payton at the helm, that is, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but that could be one of the greatest offenses of all time. The way that Payton is, the way that how creative he is, that would be unbelievable to watch. I hope that he's given a chance to do that. I hope that that's on the table. And I think the Saints could be proactive enough to go after something like that.
Okay, we were running, we were, rushing the ball for 141.5 yards a game. We were 8th best, but they were the 5th best run defense. So what occurred? We had 48 yards rushing. We averaged 3.2. Now, with that being said, we're having to play catch up. So you could say we only had 15 rushing attempts all come about. So what about when you flip it? Well, because Lamar Jackson, they always could be amongst. I'd be shocked if they're not.
It's always skewed. And we talked about that again. We talked about that in the preview. It's skewed whenever people say the Ravens have a great run offense because it's mostly Lamar Jackson. Kenyon Drake was good this game, but they're not afraid to have their running backs go 10 for 10 yards and Lamar goes 7 for 94 yards. They're a very skewed team. Statistically, that's why you can't go by strictly statistics. That's why we use advanced analytics like DVOA to break down stuff like that. So,
not always in the top.
We covered this last week.
5 rushing teams. Well, they were number 2 in the NFL, averaging 165 yards a game. They got 188, and they got 4.7 yard average. And that was one thing. We had outstanding run defense in the previous season, but this year we were 14th. We hadn't been the run defense, and a lot of fans are frustrated. And I think Coach Allen would understand this, and Cam Jordan and Demario Davis, all the leaders of the defense. That was supposed to be the strength of our team. Well, if you go on against Lamar Jackson and their strength, that looked.
I actually thought, until the second half, I actually thought we were holding them up pretty well. No one was doing anything. The Ravens didn't like dominate the game. The Ravens didn't just say like, oh, or it wasn't like, oh, the Ravens would have beat anybody that night. The Ravens were explosive. They were this, they were that. It was 14-3 at half. The game wasn't out of hand. You know, like Bobby's acting like we couldn't run the ball because the game we're out playing catch up. The game was out of hand. The problem was we just weren't doing anything. Like, that was the problem. We should have established our offense, whatever the hell that is. We should have established that versus abandoning everything. I mean, the game, I would say the game got truly out of hand, I guess, in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was 17-6. It was 17-6 going into the fourth. I mean, that's not crazy. It's a 2-possession game. It's a field goal and a touchdown with a 2-point conversion. I mean, we're down 11, 17-6 at home. Not that crazy, right? There's no reason we should have abandoned our everything. We weren't really playing from behind that much. I mean, it wasn't anything drastic. You know, like, think about the Chiefs. Think about the Chiefs, a team like that. And it's like when the Chiefs are down 11, the game is just getting started. The Dolphins, you know, the Dolphins are down 11. They're not abandoning their entire system. They're still playing. The Eagles down 11. You think the Eagles down 11 are at home are going to just abandon everything that they do and start freaking out? No, because they know who they are. We just down 11 at home at half, pack it in. Nothing.
The strength of our team, our defense against them, man, we were getting gashed sometimes. Even when they were running, they were like falling forward for 7-8 yards, it seemed like. I wrote a number of plays, and it was like, and it was like, Christian, all of a sudden, it's like, let me see where I can find this. Like,
I think this will be towards the end. So in the fourth quarter, I think Drake did rattle off a bunch of, like, 12-yard carries, 10, 15-yard carries, 10-yard carries. They did start to gash us on the ground at the end. But I mean, that's 4 quarters of getting, that happens. But I mean, we looked at it. I mean, we looked at it. Rushing wise, they ended up having a 4.7 average, which is good. I mean, like, it's good, but it's not like it was an 8 yards per carry kind of game. They started to kind of come away at the end there, rushing wise, but the defense doesn't have anything to hold their head down for. This wasn't our defense. Like, that's what I keep trying to say here is, like, the defense didn't fold. The offense was just non-existent. That's more of what was going on. The defense was on the field for a long time. I mean, they did have 37 minutes of possession. That's another huge part of it. They were absolutely taking the air out of the ball because, again, they had a scheme. They knew what they wanted to do. They wanted to run the football, kill the clock, get a lead, and leave. That's what they wanted to do. And they damn it, they did it.
Even like Drake, it was like plus 18, plus 8. But then you're writing down like a few runs, and it just like multiplies. You don't even.
I got it right here.
Yeah, almost back to back.
Yeah, the first possession.
Okay, I got it right here too.
Okay.
It seemed like it was always around 7 minutes. I mean, on that drive to set the tone to show the Saints, hey, we're in freaking.
Oh, I mean, the time of possession was crazy. I mean, the second half, the third quarter, I believe there was 2 possessions. I think it was 2 possessions. I think the Saints had a 7-minute possession that ended with a field goal, and the Ravens started off with a 7 or 8 minute possession. Let me see if I'm right about that. I believe that's how it happened in the second quarter. Yeah. So the Saints go 12 plays. Saints go 12 plays for 60 yards. Then the Ravens go. What is this right? Oh, no, this is the beginning of the game. Let's in the second quarter. Here we go. The Ravens go 12 plays, 61 yards, 7 minutes. The Saints go 12 plays, 56 yards, 7 minutes. Boom. The third quarter's over. The third quarter's over, 2 possessions in. And that's just how the game was. If you look at the Ravens' possessions, 4 plays, 2.5 minutes, 11 plays, 7 minutes, 6 plays, 3 minutes, 12 plays, 7 minutes, 12 plays, 7 minutes, 8 plays, 5 minutes, and then the end of the game here. But I mean, they were doing that all game long.
In charge, and it don't matter what you think you're gonna do to us. Out of those 11 plays, they ran 8 of them. On an 11-play drive, they had 8 runs, and it didn't matter. The Saints couldn't stop them, and then all of a sudden it's 17-3. So when you look at that, Christian, it was amazing we're even in the game, because to me, I don't know if it was even that close. And then you break down time of possession, who was setting the tone. But Rui's out of bounds, and we don't get the fumble. No, it wasn't nothing like snatched him and just threw him down. You don't see that too often.
I mean, it is kind of crazy, like the game flow, right? I mean, so it's 14-3. All right, right here. So we get the ball, okay? When we get the ball here, it's 3-17. The second half, we're 6.5 minutes into the second half. We kick a field goal here. If we score on this drive, it's 17-10. It's 17-10. Like, think about how different this. Like, I know it sounds like the Saints were out of it the entire time, but it wasn't. It just wasn't the case. Even right here. All right, so we kick the field goal. We give it back to them. They punt. We get the ball back. It's 17-6. If we score here, we can make this a field goal game. We can make it 17-14. Right? I mean, the Saints really weren't out of it until this interception. I mean, it's just, it's not good right now. That's the recap of the game. I'm sure this week we're going to talk a lot about Dennis Allen. We're going to talk a lot about the future of the Saints. I did a video last week about the future of the Saints, which is well timed, since it's basically what everyone's wondering now is, where do you go from here? I talk about it there, but we'll hash it out in videos this week, kind of discussing it more. But I just wanted to get right after this game, just kind of what I saw, what I was frustrated with. It was a brutal game. It was a miserable game to get through. I'll say that. So thank you for watching. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. What should the Saints do? What you think about the game plan, all that fun stuff. I will see you in the next video.